Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thanks so much for tuning back into the channel. It's that time of year, time to count down my top 20 favorite heavy metal albums of 2024. There's a whole bunch of records to talk about here, so let's get started. Coming in at number 20, I'm going to go with Child Within the Man by Sebastian Bach. Great statement album from Bach, showing that he's still got a lot left to offer, I think, and I enjoy this record a lot more than I thought I was going to when it first came out. This album is high energy, I think Bach still sounds great. It's a great mix of, that modern metal sound with a bit of classic Skid Row that only Bach himself can bring to the table. You can really hear that on tracks like Everybody Bleeds, Freedom, Hold On to the Dream, What Do I Got to Lose is really good, Vendetta, Crucify Me, so there are a lot of really strong tracks on here, and, if there was ever a time for a Skid Row reunion with Sebastian Bach, it would be right now, but it really doesn't seem like that's going to happen at this point. But nonetheless, Bach with a great statement album here, definitely his best album in years. Coming in at number 20, have to go with Child Within the Man. Coming in at number 19, I'm going to go with Galvanize by League of Distortion, one of my favorite up-and-coming metal bands today, and I'll never miss a chance to talk about League of Distortion or their new studio album, Galvanize. LOD avoid the sophomore slump here with a heavy, aggressive record, fronted by Anna Brunner. Her voice sounds super powerful, delivering brutal lyrics, as seen on standout tracks like Chainsaw, the title track, My Hate Will Go On, and more. Again, League of Distortion, great band, fantastic sophomore record here, would highly recommend checking them out. Number 18, I'm going to go with Equals One by Deep Purple. Metal pioneers Deep Purple released their 23rd studio album this past summer, and their first with new guitarist Simon McBride, replacing Steve Morse in the band, and I think Simon brings a bit of a heavier edge to the modern-day Deep Purple sound, which I thought was really interesting, as the band continued their excellent collaboration with Bob Ezrin, producing the record here, and the production sounds super crisp on this record. Ian Gillan's voice, well, of course, not what it used to be. I think it packs more of a powerful punch than it has on the last few records, and drummer Ian Pace is on fire throughout the entire thing. It's a fun record. Obviously, Deep Purple's best work is behind them at this point, but I think it's great that they're still active. They're still making new albums like Equals One, and, still thriving in the studio. So with that in mind, number 18 here on the list, gotta go with Equals One by Deep Purple. For number 17, we have I Want Blood by Jerry Cantrell of Alice in Chains. A heavy new record here from Jerry, and, he's just phenomenal. Whether it be his solo stuff or his work with Alice in Chains, I don't think he's ever made a bad record, just in my opinion, and I Want Blood is significantly heavier than his previous album, Brighton, from 2021. I get a lot of Degradation Trip vibes from this album here. Lots of great riffs and choruses on this one. I love tracks like Let It Lie, Off the Rails, Vilified, and more. Next up, for number 16, how about Right Here, Right Now by Ghost, the soundtrack and live album to the movie of the same name that came out this summer. I can't speak highly enough of Right Here, Right Now. Ghost have done a phenomenal job of marketing themselves and continuing to grow and pulling off the hard task of going mainstream without alienating a lot of their hardcore fans. This was yet another example of the band's excellent marketing here, putting themselves out there in theaters to a much larger audience with Right Here, Right Now. More bands should do stuff like this. It's great promotion for their music and for their live shows. And as for the live album itself here, it was recorded across 2 nights at the Kiev Forum in 2023 on the Re-Imperator. And this live album here has a killer version of Kiss the Go-Goat, Spillways, the new studio track, The Future is a Foreign Land, which I think is really cool, grows on me with every listen, and a phenomenal version of If You Have Ghosts live with the Goulettes. It's the best version I think you'll ever hear. Really blew me away when I heard it in the theater for the first time. The only thing that I could think of when this came out is this must be what people felt like when Kiss Alive came out, and maybe some people won't agree with this, but I think in a lot of respects, this is Ghost's Kiss Alive, or maybe they're Kiss Alive 2, right? Because Kiss Alive is what cemented Kiss. Ghost have been, a formidable force in metal for a while now, have been gaining popularity, so Kiss Alive 2 is kind of what put Kiss over the top. This might be Ghost's Kiss Alive 2 in a lot of ways, and I think Ghost are one of the most overhated metal bands today, and I never really understand the hate for Ghost, but they continue to do great work. Tobias Forge is a phenomenal songwriter and definitely has a great business mind as well, and, the more I thought about it, the more I just couldn't leave this album off the list, even though I'm really not including live albums here. I just couldn't leave this one off, so coming in at number 16, have to go with Right Here, Right Now. Number 15, From Hell I Rise by Kerry King, and, it's funny and so on brand that, of course, Kerry King's first solo album and his new band were going to sound exactly like Slayer 2.0, and whoever said that was a bad thing, though, right? I mean, if everybody wants more Slayer in their life, and I think it's a really solid starting out point for his new band with, all of the Kerry King and Slayer light hallmarks on this record, but I think the best part of the album is when Death Angel vocalist Mark Osagueda isn't trying to sound like Tom Araya, and that's one aspect I hope the band explores a bit more on their next record here, and Mark really shines on tracks like Residue, Shrapnel, Two Fists, and a lot of these tracks wouldn't sound out of place on some of those later Slayer-era albums, and I love Kerry's new band. It's more or less a supergroup, right? You have King, Osagueda, Phil Demmel, Paul Bostev, and Kyle Sanders. Just some great thrash metal here from top to bottom. Coming in at number 15, have to go with From Hell I Rise. Number 14, You Won't Go Before You're Supposed To by Knocked Loose. Now, I've had a bit of a love-hate relationship with this record since it came out. Didn't like it at first. I saw Knocked Loose open for Slipknot at Madison Square Garden earlier this year, and it was a really strong live set. They had the entire arena eating out of the palm of their hands, and that was crazy because the arena was full for Knocked Loose. They might as well have sold out the Garden on their own at that point. And so that's when it finally started to grow on me, and I dig it quite a bit now. Tracks like Blinding Faith, Thirst, The Slaughterhouse, and Suffocate are really killer. And now for me, if you follow the channel, you probably know that I'm not a big metalcore guy, which might be why it took so long for this album to finally click for me. But I'm really glad that it did, and I definitely can see some early Slipknot similarities and parallels in their sound. And I'm really intrigued, by where they go next. Brian Garris has a powerhouse of a voice, and I've seen a lot of people criticize their music as just screaming into a mic, although to be fair, a lot of them were just Jimmy Kimmel fans, but he's not that funny anyway. But it's definitely a lot more than that. I don't think we can measure yet how important this is to the next generation of metalcore, but I think that remains to be seen. But Knocked Loose definitely has had a breakout year here with an unrelenting 27-minute album. Definitely one that, after some deliberation, after, like I said, I've had a love-hate relationship with it, I wanted to include here on the list at number 14. Going to go with You Won't Go Before You're Supposed To by Knocked Loose. Definitely their breakthrough album, and really a phenomenal record. 13, going to go with Humanoid by Accept. It's amazing that Accept, despite all the lineup changes over the years, are still making great music. I mean, at this point, Wolf Hoffman is the only original member left in the band, and Mark Tornillo, who's been in the band now since 2009, which is crazy to think about, has done an incredible job in his time with Accept. All the Tornillo-era albums have delivered, and Humanoid is no exception. I saw them live earlier this year, touring with KK's Priest, touring this record, and the new stuff sounded great live. Accept sound really don't change, so you kind of know what to expect from an Accept album. They're distinct and unique, and Humanoid brings more of that classic Accept sound with stellar guitar work and raspy vocals by Mark. So some standouts on here for me include Humanoid, Frankenstein, Man Up, Nobody Gets Out Alive is great, Straight Up Jack, South Side of Hell. So just from top to bottom, this is a bruising record here by Accept. Another great one from the Mark Tornillo era. Number 12, going to go with The Other Side of Mars by Mick Mars. Just compare this record to what Motley Crue did this year, and it's night and day. Compare this to the canceled EP, which was awful. But Mick has moved on, and he's absolutely killing it with his first solo album here, and it's really an interesting adaptation by Mick on the more modern metal sound, and the recognizable Mars guitar sound is still there. This record is concise, the riffs cut like a knife, the lyrics here are great as well, and Mick came back with a vengeance on this album with a really scathing record, and I can't wait for his next solo album to hear how he follows this record up, because if this album's any indication, he still has a lot left to give and a lot left to offer in the studio, and so I can't wait to hear it. But this is a great starting out point, I think, in terms of Mick Mars' solo career. Great stuff, really heavy, more modern sounding record by Mick that really is better than anything Motley Crue have done in, say, 20 years. Number 11, let's go with Servitude by the Black Dahlia Murder. After the tragic passing of vocalist Trevor Sternad in 2022, I didn't know if we were ever going to get another Black Dahlia Murder record again, and I wasn't sure if we did, what would it sound like? Would I like it? Would I even want to hear it? Black Dahlia Murder without Trevor. That was probably, a bone of contention for a lot of people, right? But I'm really glad they decided to keep the personnel in-house instead of, bringing in an outside hire, and we have Brian Esbach on lead vocals here. He was replaced by Ryan Knight, I think, which was a great move, so keeping the personnel in-house, as I don't want to say Trevor's replacement, that doesn't sound right, but someone who can step in, on lead vocals and really lead the band through the next era, right? Brian has been an original member of the band, he's been a consistent member, and so I think it's really interesting to have him now fronting the group. The core of the Black Dahlia Murder sound is still there, and the band made a statement with this record that they still had more to offer, and it's obviously never going to be the same without Trevor on lead vocals, but the melodic, guitar-driven sound is still there, and there's a familiarity to this record, although the band didn't take too many risks on this album. This is one of my favorite comebacks of 2024, which was the year of great comebacks in rock and metal, and I can't wait to hear what else this, new chapter of the band has to offer going forward. Moving into the top 10 now, let's go with Yesterwynde, the new album by Nightwish. Now, some people were a bit underwhelmed by this album when it came out, but personally, I love the complexity of this record. I love some of the chances the band took in the studio here as their sound continues to evolve, and this is one of those albums that I grew to appreciate more and more with every listen, because every time I heard it, I was discovering something new, which is really a testament to their diverse instrumentation, and I'm sure if I were to put it on right now, I'd probably discover something new on this record again. It's just one of those records that you find something with every listen that maybe you didn't hear the first time, and so I thought that was kind of cool. And on top of that, Floor Jensen sounds incredible as always, and some standouts here for me include An Ocean of Strange Islands, Perfume of the Timeless, The Children of Atta, Spider Silk, The Weave, Lantern Light, Something Whispered Follow Me. A lot of great songs on here, definitely one of their most complex albums to date as well, and to get us started in the top 10, coming in at number 10, have to go with Yesterwynde. Number 9, let's go with The Underworld Awaits Us All by Nile. After what a great year for death metal 2023 was, I was really intrigued by what new death metal albums would stand out in 2024, and Nile definitely delivered here with their 10th studio effort. They're a band that I don't think I've ever made a bad studio album personally, and this one is a grower for sure. I kept going back to it, and much like what I was talking about with the new Nightwish album, kept discovering new things with each listen, which I thought was a great attribute, just to the diversity and complexity of this record. There's some great technical death metal going on here, with some standouts on this album like To Strike with Secret Fang, Overlords of the Black Earth, Under the Curse of the One God, Doctrine of the Lost Things, The Underworld Awaits Us All, and Lament for Destruction of Time. So, just top to bottom here, really strong record here by Nile. Another great album by them. Like I said, they have a flawless catalog as far as I'm concerned, and just some great death metal, some of the best death metal of 2024. Number 8, Hellfire and Damnation by Saxon. Somewhere along the way, Saxon seemed to get lost in the shuffle and never quite got the same level of recognition as their new wave of British heavy metal counterparts like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, just to name a couple, but they've remained a very consistent band over the years and have done some excellent work on their last few studio albums. I thought Carpe Diem from 2022 was going to be hard to follow, but they did just that with an even stronger record, in my opinion, here with Hellfire and Damnation, their 24th studio album, and Saxon once again turning back time, showing that age is just a number, with a heavy, brooding record produced by Andy Sneap. Andy Sneap always does a great job. The mix on this album is just right. I love the guitar tone on this record. I think the duo of Doug Scarrett and Diamond Head's Brian Tadler have great chemistry together, and of course frontman Biff Byford still sounds phenomenal at 73 years old. And there's some absolute modern Saxon classics on here, like Hellfire and Damnation, the title track. Madame Guillotine was great live when I saw it. There's Something in Roswell, a lot of fun. Witches of Salem, very heavy. Pirates of the Airwaves, a lot of great stuff on here. I saw them live earlier this year with Uriah Heep, and they played a lot of stuff from this record, and it all sounded really strong live. And so I think it's great that Saxon, while underrated, continues to do some great stuff and be on this killer run later in their career in the studio. And so this album, definitely one of their best recent albums, and really pleased with this record and what was really a great year for new wave of British heavy metal all around. Number 7, Mind Burns Alive by Pallbearer, one of my favorite doom bands out there today. After the masterpiece that was Forgotten Days from 2020, Pallbearer took a bit of a more stripped-down approach to their next album, that of course being this one right here, Mind Burns Alive, produced by Zach Reeves and Jason Weinheimer. And I really dig the less is more vibe to this album. This is a doomy, brooding record, and the bleakness and restraint of the album adds a whole new dimension to it, while the lyrics cut like a knife, making for, I think, a great successor to Forgotten Days. And there's so much emotion in Brett Campbell's vocal delivery that's easy to get lost in this record, especially on tracks like Where the Light Fades, the title track, Endless Place, and With Disease. Great stuff, and personally, my favorite doom metal album of 2024. Coming in at number 7, have to go with Mind Burns Alive by Pallbearer. Number 6, One Assassination Under God by Marilyn Manson. Who would have thought a year ago, if you follow the channel, that I'd have a Marilyn Manson album in my top 10 favorite albums of the year? I mean, certainly not me, but it just goes to show you how tastes can change over time, and Manson's changed too. With his best studio album in at least 20 years. One Assassination Under God, Chapter 1, marks the return of the Antichrist superstar, who really comes out swinging with some of his coldest lyrics in his entire catalog, collaborating once again with Tyler Bates, and clearly drawing influence from classics like Holy Wood and Mechanical Animals. Manson looks and sounds and is writing like it's 2001 again, and it's a great thing to see. Every song on here is a banger in my opinion, and this album is all killer and no filler from top to bottom. The title track is a modern Manson classic. Not If You Understand sounds like it's right out of Antichrist Superstar. As Sick as The Secret Within is a great lead single, to draw everyone in, and Sacrifice of the Mass might be Manson's most introspective song ever. I thought very Man That You Fear, very Count to Six and Die-esque, and I really dig this album just from top to bottom here. I really love it, and and so I was pleasantly surprised by Manson's comeback in 2024. I think a lot of us were, and he really left no doubt that he's back and better than ever, and I can't wait for Chapter 2. So for my number 6, wanted to put it close to the top 5 here. Going to go with One Assassination Under God by Marilyn Manson, his best album in at least 20 years. Top 5, let's go with Blood Incantation and their new album, Absolute Elsewhere. Blood Incantation are just operating at an entirely different level right now than everyone else, and I've heard a lot of people compare this record to if Pink Floyd made a death metal record, and I can definitely hear that. This album is split into two 20-minute epics divided into 3 sections each, but really this is an album you just need to listen to from top to bottom in order from, beginning to end. It has a little bit of everything. Even if you're not a death metal fan, if you like prog, you'll definitely appreciate the nods to classic progressive rock here. I love the complexity of the time signatures and the riffage throughout. From beginning to end, the instrumentation makes for a really unpredictable listen. This album takes twists and turns that really push progressive death metal to previously unexplored boundaries. It's a groundbreaking album for sure, and one that I honestly believe we'll be looking back on in 20 years from now as one of the most important and influential death metal records, of the 21st century, So hats off to Blood Incantation. Hands down the best death metal album of 2024, and I think right now there's really not quite a measure on it, but definitely going to be one of the most important death metal albums to be released in the last 2-3 decades. Number 4, my favorite thrash metal album of 2024 has got to be Swallowed by Hell by Morbid Saint. This album, was something that kind of flew under the radar, I think, for a lot of people. Morbid Saint quietly released a masterpiece earlier this year with Swallowed by Hell, and they're a prime example of another one of those thrash metal bands late in their careers doing incredible work. After the band broke up in 1994, we didn't get to hear a proper version of 1992's Destruction System in full until 2015, and so for all intents and purposes, this is the first Morbid Saint album of new material in 3 decades, with, a majority of the original lineup too, and what a comeback this was, really. Just an aggressive, energetic, brutal trip down memory lane, keeping up with the breakneck intensity of, Spectrum of Death, but also managing to sound modern and new. I was blown away by how sharp they sounded on this record, especially here on tracks like Swallowed by Hell, Bloody Floors, Burn Pit, probably my favorite song from this record, Fear Incarnate, Bleed Them Dry, Pine Tuxedo, Psychosis, just a raging thrash metal record here, and like I said before, my favorite thrash album of the year, so coming in at number 4, had to include them in the top 5, gonna go with Swallowed by Hell by Morbid Saint. Once we get to the top 3, it's all really close together. We're dealing with 3 near-perfect albums here, so with that said, let's get started in the top 3 here with the Opeth. Of course, I'm talking about Last Will and Testament by Opeth. For the first time since Watershed in 2008, the death metal growls are back. Michael Eichelfeld really outdid himself here. This is one of the band's most creative, progressive, and experimental to date. The death growls return, but the music is still progressive. It's proggy as well, which I thought was a great thing. And, instead of isolating tracks on this album, really just go listen to it in order, no shuffle. It has a great flow to it, and it's very consistent. And looking at their catalog, they have 14 albums in total, and I would probably put this album right up there with their best stuff already. So coming in at number 3, let's go with Last Will and Testament by Opeth. Number 2, Invincible Shield by Judas Priest. Priest's best record, in my opinion, since Angel of Retribution from 2005. It's a great continuation of what the band started on Firepower, but mixed with the explosiveness that takes the listener back to Painkiller. Another album tour I saw this year, and I'm really excited to see the set list for the upcoming Shield of Pain tour as well, because I hope they play more from this record live. Seems like they're going to be doing, Invincible Shield Painkiller type tour, kind of similar to what Maiden are doing with Somewhere in Time and Senjutsu on the Future Past tour. But The Serpent and the King should definitely be played live. It's, in my opinion, the best Priest song in like 15 years. Other standouts here, for me include Panic Attack, Rite, Invincible Shield, Devil in Disguise, Crown of Horns, As God Is My Witness, Trial by Fire, Sons of Thunder, Giants in the Sky. Top to bottom, every song on here is fantastic, and, the band are just firing on all cylinders at this point. This is a modern Priest masterpiece for sure, and it would have been my number 1 on the list, if not for another great album by another new wave of British heavy metal legend. And finally, without further ado, my favorite album of 2024 in heavy metal has got to be the Mandrake Project by Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden. This is Bruce's first solo album since Tyranny of Souls from 2005, and if you follow the channel, you know by now that Bruce is my favorite vocalist of all time, and so I might be a bit biased, but I love the Mandrake Project, and Iron Maiden are my favorite band. So just a general rule of thumb on the channel, if there's a new Iron Maiden album or a new Iron Maiden related record out, it's probably going to be my album of the year. but I don't think it's just bias because, I love the thought that went into this album. It features the original version of If Eternity Should Fail, so we know that it goes back, the work on this album goes back to at least 2015. Bruce put a lot of time into this, the concept, the story, the vocals, and the emotion conveyed on this record. It's all just stellar stuff, great storytelling, and of course, it's a deep, complex record. I wouldn't expect anything else from Bruce Dickinson. It's Bruce being very self-indulgent, but in the best way possible, and every song on here is great. I love tracks like Afterglow of Ragnarok, Many Doors to Hell, Rain on the Graves, Resurrection Men, the original Eternity Has Failed, Face in the Mirror, and Sonata, Immortal Beloved. Stellar album closer, probably my favorite record on the entire album, even though, like I said, it's all great stuff. Bruce's solo band is excellent, and I really wish he'd do some solo dates in America, but looks like he'll be all booked up with Maiden for the Run for Your Lives tour in 2025, but nevertheless, the Mandrake project, Bruce back doing the solo thing here and knocking it out of the park as far as I'm concerned. Album of the year for me, coming in at number 1. I gotta go with the Mandrake Project by Bruce Dickinson. So there you have it, my top 20 favorite metal albums of the year. You guys can see my picks right over here. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications so you don't miss a new upload, and please let me know down in the comment section below what is your favorite metal album of 2024. I want to hear from you. Drop your picks down in the comment section. Please let me know your thoughts on my list and some of your favorites as well. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.